When scanning a 1899 family image, a face appears that no one recognizes. Margaret Chen carefully positioned the antique photograph on her high-resolution scanner in her Denver, Colorado home office. As a professional archivist specializing in family genealogy, she had been hired by the wealthy Patterson family to digitize their extensive collection of 19th-century photographs. This particular image, dated September 1899, showed the Patterson family gathered on the front porch of their Victorian mansion for what appeared to be a celebration or reunion. The original photograph was remarkably well preserved, showing 13 family members arranged in 3 rows. Margaret had already identified most of the faces from the detailed family records provided by her client Eleanor Patterson Williams, the family matriarch's great-great-granddaughter. The scanning process was routine work until she loaded the high-resolution file onto her computer screen. As Margaret zoomed in to check the image quality, her eyes stopped on something that made her heart skip a beat. There, partially visible in the background through a window of the house, was the clear outline of a face, someone who appeared to be watching the family gathering from inside. The face was sharp and distinct, showing a young woman with dark hair pulled back, wearing what looked like a simple white dress. Margaret checked her notes again, counting the family members. According to Eleanor's detailed genealogical records, only 13 people should have been present that day. But this 14th person, hidden in the window, wasn't mentioned in any of the family documentation or identified in any of the other photographs from the same period. Margaret enhanced the image using professional photo editing software, adjusting contrast and sharpness to get a clearer view of the mysterious face in the window. The woman appeared to be in her early 20s, with delicate features and an expression that seemed both watchful and melancholy. Her clothing suggested she was dressed more simply than the elaborately dressed Patterson family members gathered outside. Intrigued by the discovery, Margaret called Eleanor Patterson Williams to discuss the finding. Eleanor, now 78 years old, was the family's unofficial historian and had spent decades documenting their lineage and collecting photographs, letters, and memorabilia. "That's impossible," Eleanor said over the phone, her voice puzzled. "I know everyone who lived in that house in 1899. My great-great-grandmother, Sarah Patterson, kept meticulous records of all family gatherings, household staff, and visitors. There's no mention of any young woman matching that description." Eleanor arranged to visit Margaret's office the following day to examine the enhanced image in person. When she saw the face in the window, her reaction was immediate and startling. "I've never seen this woman before in my life," she whispered, "but there's something familiar about her features. Something about the shape of her eyes and the line of her jaw reminds me of family portraits I've seen." Margaret suggested they begin a systematic investigation, starting with household employment records, visitor logs, and any correspondence from September 1899. If this woman had been present during the family gathering, there had to be some record of her existence somewhere in the Patterson family archives. Eleanor returned to Margaret's office 3 days later carrying 2 large boxes filled with documents from 1899. Together they spread out household ledgers, employment records, correspondence, and even grocery receipts across Margaret's large worktable. The Patterson family had been remarkably thorough in their record keeping, documenting everything from staff wages to social visits. The household employment records for September 1899 listed 3 servants: Mrs. Hannah O'Brien, cook; Thomas Murphy, groundskeeper; and Mary Collins, housekeeper. All 3 were accounted for in the family's other photographs and documents. There was no record of any additional domestic help or temporary staff during that period. The correspondence files revealed something more interesting. Sarah Patterson had exchanged several letters with her sister-in-law Martha Patterson, who lived in Boston. In one letter dated September 10, 1899, just 5 days before the family gathering, Sarah mentioned that Martha had written about sending someone to help with the preparations for their reunion. Margaret found Martha's reply letter, which was cryptic. The girl I mentioned will arrive quietly and help where needed. She knows to remain discreet about her circumstances. Please ensure she is treated with kindness, as she has endured much hardship." Eleanor frowned as she read the letter. "This doesn't match any family stories I've heard. Why would Martha send someone to help? And why all this secrecy about circumstances and discretion? The Pattersons weren't known for being mysterious about household help." Margaret suggested they research Martha Patterson's life more thoroughly, particularly focusing on her activities and associations in Boston during the 1890s. If Martha had sent this mysterious woman, understanding Martha's life might reveal the identity of the face in the window. Margaret's research into Martha Patterson's life in Boston revealed a surprising discovery. Martha had been actively involved with several charitable organizations, had assisted young women in difficult circumstances. Specifically, the organizations helped women leaving prostitution, escaping abusive marriages, or recovering from other traumatic situations. Eleanor was shocked by this revelation. "The family never talked about Martha's charitable work," she said. "They always described her as a quiet widow who kept to herself after her husband died. I had no idea she was involved in social reform work." Margaret found records at the Boston Public Library showing that Martha had been a significant donor to the Boston Female Moral Reform Society and had served on the board of the Temporary Home for Fallen Women. These organizations provided safe housing, job training, and new identities for women seeking to escape dangerous or degrading situations. A breakthrough came when Margaret discovered a letter in Martha's papers, filed separately from the Patterson family collection at the Massachusetts Historical Society. The letter, dated September 8, 1899, was addressed to Sarah Patterson and provided more explicit details. "Dear Sarah, I am sending Miss Rose Sullivan to assist with your gathering. She is a bright young woman who has successfully completed our training program and needs a fresh start away from Boston. She has excellent domestic skills and can help with preparation and service. However, I must ask that her presence be kept confidential, as there are still those in Boston who might wish her harm. She will travel under the name Rose Murphy and has papers documenting her employment history. Please treat her as family during her stay." The letter was signed in Martha's distinctive handwriting and sealed with her personal wax stamp. For the first time, Margaret and Eleanor had a name for the mysterious face in the window: Rose Sullivan, a young woman seeking refuge and a new beginning. Armed with the name Rose Sullivan, Margaret began searching Boston records from the 1890s. What she discovered painted a tragic but hopeful picture of a young woman's struggle for survival and redemption in late 19th century America. Rose Sullivan had been born in 1878 to Irish immigrant parents in Boston's North End. Her father had died in a factory accident when she was 12. Leaving her mother to support 3 children through laundry work. When Rose was 16, her mother became ill, and Rose was forced to seek employment to support the family. Court records from 1896 showed that Rose had been arrested during a police raid on a boarding house known for prostitution. However, instead of being imprisoned, she had been referred to Martha Patterson's reform organization as part of a progressive program designed to help rather than punish young women caught in desperate circumstances. Margaret found Rose's file in the archives of the Temporary Home for Fallen Women. The record showed that Rose had spent nearly 3 years in their program, learning to read and write, training in domestic skills, and slowly recovering from the trauma of her experiences. Her case file included notes from counselors describing her as intelligent, determined, and eager to build a respectable life. The most revealing document was Rose's own handwritten testimony. Required as part of the program, "I was never a willing participant in the life I was forced to live. I did what I had to do to keep my family from starving. I dream of a day when I can work in a respectable household and hold my head high in society. I want to prove that a person's past does not determine their future." Eleanor wiped away tears as Margaret read Rose's words aloud. She was just a child. Eleanor Whisper, a child forced into an impossible situation who fought her way back to respectability. Margaret's continued research revealed that the Patterson family's involvement with Rose Sullivan was part of a larger, previously unknown pattern of quiet philanthropy. Sarah Patterson, it turned out, had been one of Martha's most trusted partners in helping women transition in new lives. In Martha's detailed correspondence with Sarah, Margaret found evidence that Rose was not the first woman to receive refuge at the Patterson home. Between 1895 and 1905, at least 6 other women had spent time at the Patterson estate, working as temporary domestic help while establishing new identities and building respectable employment histories. Your home has become a sanctuary, Martha had written to Sarah in 1898. These women arrive broken and leave whole. You have given them something more valuable than money. You have given them dignity and hope. The arrangement was carefully structured to protect both the women and the Patterson family's reputation. The women would arrive with false employment references, work for several months, all learning proper domestic skills, and then be placed in permanent positions with other respectable families who were part of the network. Eleanor discovered additional evidence in her great-grandmother's personal diary, which she had never fully examined before. Sarah's entries from September 1899 provided intimate details about Rose's stay. Rose arrived today and immediately proved herself. Rose proved capable and hardworking. Martha had been right. Despite her difficult past, she carried herself with the dignity of a lady. The family gathering went smoothly, and Rose remained appropriately discreet. Sarah even wrote that she hoped Rose might choose to stay longer, as she had brought a quiet sense of joy to the household. A later diary entry revealed Sarah's deeper personal connection to Rose's situation. She wrote that Rose reminded her of her own daughter, Catherine, who had died young. Rose was close to the age Catherine would have been, and Sarah saw in her the same intelligence and spirit. Helping Rose, she wrote, felt like a way to honor Catherine's memory. Margaret's investigation took an unexpected turn when she discovered the identity of the photographer who had taken the 1899 family portrait. The photographer's stamp on the back of the image led her to the archives of Morrison and Sons Photography, a Denver studio that had served wealthy families throughout the Rocky Mountain region. In the Morrison archives, Margaret found the photographer's notes from the Patterson session. James Morrison Jr. had written detailed observations about each assignment, including technical notes and personal impressions. His entry for September 15, 1899, proved illuminating. He wrote that he had photographed the Patterson family reunion with 13 family members arranged on the front porch. Mrs. Patterson had specifically asked that he not include the young woman assisting with service, even though she could be seen through the parlor window during the session. Sarah explained that the girl was shy and preferred not to be formally photographed. Morrison noted that he respected her wishes. Although the girl's reflection might still appear faintly in the background, this note confirmed that Rose's appearance in the window had not been accidental. She had placed herself where she could watch the family gathering without becoming part of the formal portrait. The moment suggested a mixture of curiosity, longing, and awareness of her place in the household. Margaret also found Morrison's business ledger, which showed that Sarah Patterson had ordered an unusually large number of prints of the photograph, far more than a family would normally need. When Margaret compared these prints with letters in the Patterson archives, she discovered that Sarah had sent copies to several families connected to Martha's reform network. The photograph had served two purposes. It documented the Patterson family gathering, but they had also quietly demonstrated to other potential supporters that helping reformed women could be done discreetly without disrupting ordinary family life. Margaret's most exciting discovery came when she found a reference to Rose Sullivan in Denver City records from 1900. Rose had remained with the Patterson family for nearly a year after the 1899 gathering, long enough to establish herself in Denver under her new identity, Rose Murphy. The 1900 Denver City Directory listed Rose Murphy as the head housekeeper for the prominent Hartwell family on Capitol Hill. Margaret contacted the current owners of the Hartwell mansion, who maintained detailed records of the property's history. They confirmed that Rose Murphy had worked for the original Hartwell family from 1900 to 1905 and had been highly respected for her efficiency and discretion. Margaret also discovered that Rose used her savings to bring her younger sister from Boston to Denver in 1902. Immigration records showed that Mary Sullivan joined her sister, who was now living under the name Rose Murphy, and found work as a seamstress in a reputable dress shop. Further research revealed another surprising detail. Rose eventually married Thomas Murphy, the Patterson family's groundskeeper, in 1905. Marriage records showed that Thomas left his position with the Patterson estate to start a landscaping business. With Rose as his partner, Eleanor was amazed by this discovery. She explained that Thomas Murphy had often been mentioned in family stories. Her great-great-grandmother had always spoken fondly of him and said he had married a wonderful woman who helped him build a successful business. Eleanor had never realized that woman was Rose. Margaret later found references in Denver newspaper society pages from the 1910s mentioning Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Murphy attending community events and supporting local charities. Rose had successfully transformed her life, becoming a respected member of Denver society. The final pieces of Rose Sullivan's story came together when Margaret discovered that Rose and Thomas Murphy created their own charitable foundation. In 1915, the Murphy Foundation was designed to help young women build new lives. Much like Rose had once done, the organization operated quietly for more than 30 years, helping hundreds of women escape difficult situations and find respectable work. Eleanor was stunned to learn that the Patterson family estate had been one of the Murphy Foundation's most consistent supporters. Sarah Patterson had continued to support Rose's work until her death in 1920. Establishing an endowment that funded the foundation's activities for many years. My great-great-grandmother never told anyone about this, Eleanor said.